We now have Mr. Alessandro Politi, the director of the NATO Defense College Foundation, that will entertain a speech on the topic of the Security Council, which is weather warfare, but on the role of the Security Council in general. It's quite different than what we heard so far, but please, Mr. Politi.
Let's start with fixed technology. It should work better. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for this wonderful opportunity. I see a lot of girls around, which is a very positive sign. Generally, in my circles, we have still a lot of old hacks, staying there. And I think we need that sort of diversity because we are in a changing global paradigm. I have heard this very interesting example about, the YouTube thing with the ape, coming in the background. And as you know, there is a very popular theory in our international affairs discussions about black swans, these highly unpredictable, high-impact events. Well, what I would like to tell you is that in many cases, these black swans are white vultures we simply didn't want to see. If one of the classic examples is the rise of Nazism, well, that isn't a black swan, with all due respect. It is a thing that was highly visible and highly understandable. But people had their minds concentrated on other things. And so they minimized. And so they didn't see. And so they tried to deny reality. Now we have the same problem with weather. As you know, for at least 30 years, there has been a quite, intense debate in certain, smaller circles concerning the possibility to use weather as a warfare tool. And so you can enhance precipitations, you can enhance storms, you can, at least in theory, you try. You can deny precipitations, you can affect the weather in space, you can enhance or remove fogs and clouds, at least in theory. Now, I think that we are living in a world where governments are surely important and national interests too. But we are also talking about a so-called post-Westphalian order, which means that national interests are not the only and unique standards in judging what is, wise, correct, and interesting to do, not just for the country, the protagonist countries, but for the rest of the world. If you look at the issue of global warming and a number of other very crucial issues, food security, availability of drinkable water, circulation of knowledge, global finance, you will see that we are living indeed on a very small, isolated planet with no important spare parts and no Earth, as a reserve. We don't have a number 2 spaceship. This spaceship is the only one we have for the time being. And it has a very fragile ozone layer shielding us from space radiations. And we ourselves are, going up to probably 9 billion people, but we are a quite vulnerable living species. Homo sapiens is not eternal. It could disappear if we don't manage correctly our environment. We could, of course, obliterate ourselves with nuclear weapons, which is exactly, one of the issues that are still debated, about our future. So when we talk about weather modification for, warfare users, I tend to be extremely skeptical. First of all, because militarily, we already are able, at least the most advanced countries, to conduce warfare in what we call an environment 24/7. It means night and day, every day, at least, until people don't drop down by fatigue. So why should we modify weather when we have radars that cut across the fog, or, night vision devices that can see very clearly even in the thickest, black night? Frankly, I would spend my money, for better uses. Why should we mess with something, and here is the fundamental question, that we don't know still fully? Because you see, global warming is not an invention of some mad scientist. It is real. If you go to your mountaintops, you will see that glaciers are retreating. They are not advancing. And the melting of snow means water. So it is a very real issue. If we add beyond the already massive modification we are already undertaking each day by consuming fossil energy to our environment, well, I'm terribly sorry, we will add other modifications to already a quite negative modification of our environment, the only environment we have. There is no spare part, be assured. So, if I would like now to sum up, what I'm saying is, wait until we are able, first of all, to stop global warming. And already to stop this development will require concentrated, sustained, and global effort. You remember that President Clinton made a very important gentleman agreement with Xi Jinping to reduce the amounts of carbon produced. Well, even if both parties respect fully their goals, this will be insufficient to stop global warming. This is why Obama tries to pull in also India. And then it will be not enough. So why should we try to modify the environment if we are incapable to modify positively the environment to our advantage for a very high-profile issue? And I would underline both for warlike users and peaceful users. I read a very interesting document, which was, of course, a debate document, a reflection document of the US Air Force in the 90s. They said, modifying environment is like splitting the atom. It is high risk, but also high reward. And they say, yes, you are right. Well, if you look at Fukushima, you see that there is a high risk. And if you look about the debate on nuclear weapons, you see that the newer trend, at least in political will and intentions, is to denuclearize the world. Not just reduce nuclear weapons. This is what has been said by President Obama very recently. Don't think that I'm some sort of peacenik, a utopianist. I'm a military historian by training, and I worked for long years with a couple of defense ministries. So I talk on personal experience, and as a European, I have at least an experience of 1 millennium of wars, minimum, to talk about, what is war and how it is difficult to govern once it is unleashed. Thank you very much.